Hey everybody, in today's interview I welcome Lion Goodman to explore his career journey and his expertise around engaging with and changing beliefs. I had a lot of fun with Lion. I think that his work runs very parallel to mine. I also got to experience one of his techniques firsthand around one of my formative stories. It's an experience that I've processed quite a few times in therapy, but one of those processes, I guess a formational story that just always can use a little extra attention in order to heal from it. And this, on the show, you'll hear a small taste of that work done in real time. I want to offer a content warning on this. There's a somewhat traumatic experience that Lion shares early on that could be triggering for some sensitive folks. So just be warned, that's early on in the conversation. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and leave a comment. But let's go ahead and get on into it. This, of course, is the Meaning Movement podcast. It's a show about work worth doing. I'm here to help you level up your life, your income, your career, to help you get more of the outcomes that you're seeking from the things that you are pursuing. I'm your host, Dan Cumberland, today with guest Lion Goodman. Stay with us. There's a big problem that's changing everything about the world as we know it: carbon and the impact of humans on the earth. We talk about it with words like climate change and global warming. But there's just two really important things that you need to know about it. First, this is an overwhelmingly big problem. So much so that it's likely that you feel as though your choices don't matter in the face of it. Second, that overwhelming feeling that I just mentioned, it's intentional. It was put there by design. The industries that make the biggest environmental impact have a vested interest in you feeling overwhelmed and powerless. They've marketed, lobbied, and schemed to create that feeling in all of us. In short, we've been lied to. But here's the good news. There's a lot you can do to make a difference. And the other good news is that there's still time. The Carbon Almanac is a book and project about these problems and what we can do to solve them. It was created and run by volunteers on the premise that it's not too late, but none of us can fix this problem on our own. We need each other. There are many ways to get involved, but simply learning more is a great start. Here are 3 steps you can take. First, go to thecarbonalmanac.org and sign up for the Daily Difference emails. They give you a short thought and a practical action that you can take alongside thousands of others every day. Second, get the Carbon Almanac book. It's full of facts, articles, graphs, and art. It's beautiful and fun to engage with. It's all footnoted and fact-checked. And importantly, it's made by volunteers whose only agenda is to solve these systemic issues. You can find it wherever books are sold. Finally, since you're listening to a podcast, search for the Carbon Almanac wherever you're listening. You'll find the Carbon Almanac Podcast Network and a few shows featuring expert insight, discussion, inspiration, and ways to take action. There's even a show just for kids. Do what appeals to you. Just do something. There's still time to make a huge difference in the future of the planet, but we can't solve this on our own. Join us. Lion, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome to the Meaning Movement.
Thank you, Dan. I'm happy to be here.
The first question, I'm going to ask you a different question. I literally just told you I was going to ask you this question. The first question is your name actually Lion?
It actually is Lion, yes. It's not the name my parents gave me, but It is my actual name.
Oh, I'm going to circle back to that because I want to hear more about that choice and how you come to know that of yourself and be known by that in the world. The question I told you I would start with is, how do you begin to talk about the work that you do?
Well, I talk about what beliefs are, where they come from, and why we have them. Most people think about beliefs as mental constructs, like I believe in more government or I believe in less government. But beliefs are much more than that. They're actually multidimensional constructs that the mind has used from the very beginning to put together the world and ourselves and, how do we relate to other people. So the problem is that a lot of the constructs that we created early in life aren't working anymore. So these are the old programs like I'm not worthy or there's something wrong with me. or I can only do what dad did.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so most people are stopped from moving forward in their life, not by circumstances, because there's lots of possibilities out there, but by these internal programs, these internal beliefs that limit them from expanding, being themselves, diving into new territory, becoming courageous, or just finding meaning in their lives.
I love that. That's on topic for me, for my work, for I feel like the work that I'm doing even in my own life right now, and so I'm super excited to dig into all of that. What how does that work manifest itself? Like what are the tools that you're using, the vehicles that you use to help people around these beliefs?
Well, first of all, I teach these tools to other coaches, therapists, and healers because I wanted to spread them because they're so good. They work so well that I wanted to spread them as widely as possible. So I've trained over
Yeah.
500 people around the world, 45 different countries in this methodology I call the Clear Beliefs Method. And the reason it came about was I was trying to fix myself from a very early
Yeah.
age. I
Yeah.
knew there was something wrong with me.
Aren't we all, right? Aren't we all just
Yeah.
trying to fix ourselves?
And that's one of the most common beliefs is there's something wrong with me, and there's a good explanation for that. So from a very early age, I was trying to figure out what that was and how to fix it. And so over time, I took more than 100 different trainings and workshops and programs and studied with different teachers. When I went to college, I studied neuroscience and as well as psychology and philosophy and religions and everything I could get my hands on because I was trying to understand myself and the world. And I was
Mm.
really fortunate. I had an early teacher when I was 19 years old who asked me, what is the nature of human nature? He said, if you can
Mm.
answer that question, you can do well in the world.
Yeah.
And so that was my quest is try to
I love
understand the
that.
nature of human nature. And so that's what I've been up to. I found my answers, the answers that worked best for me, tried it on other people, it worked best for them. So that's how I brought this technology together.
I love that. So how would you today answer that question of what is the nature of human nature?
The nature of human nature is multidimensional. That we're not one kind of creature. We
Mm.
have our physical aspect, our mental aspect, our emotional aspect, our spiritual aspect, our energetic aspect, our karmic aspect, our social and cultural programming aspect. So we're very complex creatures, and we follow certain patterns. So if we just follow the patterns in our lives, we are very limited because our
Mm.
patterns were structured to limit us. But
Yeah.
what's possible is to unlimit ourselves and to change those patterns. But it's not easy. You have to have the right
Yeah.
technology. And there's a lot of wrong and not useful technologies out there.
I love it. I love it. So let's just kind of rewind a little bit just to ask, so I understand you kind of went to college, kind of exploring around these paths. I'm sure there's a lot that took place between those early years of career for you to really creating content around this, teaching coaches, doing coaching yourself, writing books, all the things that you're doing now. Can you just narrate a little bit of like what is what has your career trajectory been? What are some of the major movements along the way?
Well, the greatest crunch point came when I was 26 years old. I had graduated from college with a degree in consciousness studies back in 1975, and nobody was hiring people with degrees in consciousness studies.
Yes.
So I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yes.
And so I had tried an entrepreneurial business when I was first in college. That failed. And I was kind of wandering around as a traveling salesman, just trying to find myself. And I
Yeah.
traveled around about 15 different states around the Southwest. And I really was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I was having a good time traveling in a RV van and selling goods to stores, but it wasn't satisfying, and it certainly didn't meet my intellectual needs. It was just something to do to make money. And so I was 26 years old, and whenever I traveled, I would stop and help people whose cars had broken down on the road. And this happened when I was heading from Las Vegas into LA. I stopped and helped this guy whose car had broken down in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And his car was broken, so I gave him a ride, and we ended up traveling together for 3 days. And I grew to trust him and send him on errands and that kind of thing. And the third night out, he pulled out a gun and shot me 4 times in the head.
Whoa. Whoa. I did not see that coming. That's a twist in
Ne-
the story.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
If I had, I would have
Wow.
made different choices. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this was I had an out of body experience. I knew I was going to die, so I was out in the other dimensions, looking down at this little scene, going, "That's very interesting." And
Wow.
the fourth bullet hit me, and I was back in my body, and I didn't understand why. And so
Hmm.
I felt okay. I felt intact. And I had studied neuroscience, so I knew that had the bullets gone through my brain, I would be missing something. So I was looking for what's missing, and nothing seemed to be missing. So I said, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to turn and face my assassin. And so I picked up my head and I looked over to him, and he freaked out. And he said, "Why aren't you dead? You're supposed to be dead." And I said, "Here I am," because I didn't have a good answer for that.
Wow.
And he was completely freaked out. And so I ended up, to cut the short story very short, it's a long story. We ended up talking for 8 hours after this happened, and we both were transforming during that time. So I was transforming, I was changing, he was changing, and we ended up shaking hands and parting. And I took myself to the hospital. So
Wow.
from an out of body experience to that happening, it was pretty transformational.
Wow. Uh Man, that is just a wild, one of the wildest stories I've ever heard. And I mean, transformation, also traumatic. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, like, it takes you a long time to process and to work through and to come to terms with.
Yeah, it took me a month. But one of the reasons why it was not traumatic was because I was fully present for the entire experience.
Yeah.
And trauma is often caused by us leaving our bodies or going away from the experience because it was too
Mm,
painful. And then it gets stuck in the psyche. So I
yeah.
was fully present at every moment, including being out of body and coming back in body and talking. And so there really wasn't anything much left to process. So I was able to find a job and go to work within a month.
Wow. What do you how do you account for that, for your ability to be present in the midst of such a crazy event?
I had already studied meditation and yoga and spiritual different paths and religions and my mind and my brain. And so I was an active student of consciousness. In fact, my degree is in consciousness studies. So I was already awakening. I will put it that
Yeah.
way. I was already in that process. So I also understood death and dying, and death didn't scare me. It was just, oh, that's the next thing that happens. And so none of it freaked me out. And the one thing I remember most clearly is that I did not want to die with anger or upset. I wanted to die clean because
Yeah.
I knew that any anger or upset would cause me to stiffen up and not have a clean exit, right?
Mm.
And so I kept relaxing and I kept being in the light of that transition. And so when the fourth bullet hit me, instead of going through my brain, it actually pushed my head over and the bullet glanced off my skull, which is how I survived. So part of
Wow.
it was being relaxed in the middle of the experience, and the other part was accepting and being present to what was happening.
Yeah. So it sounds like in some ways you're saying you had done your work. You had already yeah, prepared your mind, I guess, for handling whatever life could throw at you. And this seems like quite a
It was
curveball.
it was a good test.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So then let's just keep connecting some of the dots here from that experience. And and at that point you were doing sales and things like that. Like, tell me more about, like, what the other roles you've held as kind of your work, I assume, kind of began to focus more and more on this kind of, consciousness and the work that you do now.
Well, interestingly, I went the other direction. I had
Yeah.
been kind of a spiritual hippie traveling around, and I wasn't very grounded. So this experience actually grounded me, and I
Hmm.
and I became a headhunter, which is kind of ironic after having my head hunted.
Yeah, not a you didn't become a literal headhunter, but yes, yes,
Yeah, well, I've
a
been
placement. Yeah, yeah, HR for HR.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I kind of stumbled into that
Yeah,
because I didn't know what else to do.
yeah.
And that became my career for 25 years. And I
Wow.
eventually built my own business. I built $1 million practice doing executive search. My specialty was healthcare and information systems. And so that I became a manager. I wanted to become a really good headhunter. Then I wanted to become a good manager, then a good leader. And so that was my path for
Your
25 years.
trajectory. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And so let's just kind of connect the dots there from that path to where you are now. When did that wrap up? Why did it wrap up? And when did your focus, your current focus, emerge as a professional, pursuit?
I like to say that I was a headhunter for 25 years and I should have ended it after 20.
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that I was I was getting bored. I was doing the same thing. I was good at what I did. I had a company. We were thriving. Everything was great. And then the dot bomb happened, the
Mm,
great dot crash,
yep.
and all of my clients stopped hiring people.
Mm,
And so I went from having $1 million business to the next year having a $250,000 business, to the next year having a zero business.
wow.
And during that time, I was kind of flailing around, going, "What do I do now?"
Yeah.
And my girlfriend at the time was teaching people how to do coaching, and she said, "You ought to be a coach." I said, "I don't know anything about coaching." And she said, "Well, I don't want to coach anymore. I'm going to give you my clients. Of course, you know what you're doing. You've had all that work and you've been working with executives. So here's my
Yeah.
client list." And so,
Yeah.
so I started coaching, and I found out that I loved it. It was actually the best part of what I had done before,
Mm,
of interviewing people and finding the right people for the right people. So I got to use everything I had learned and developed and grown into in my own personal development, plus everything I had learned about executives and business and that sort of thing. And so I
yeah.
became a really good executive coach. And then as I was bringing in all this technology from my self development years, I realized I've got some really special tools here that can create massive transformation quickly and permanently. And so
Yeah.
that became my passion.
I love that. And I love how, like you said, you use everything from your experience as a headhunter. It's like it's real always amazing to see how life tends to do that. Like that where we don't know what we're preparing for, but we're being prepared and we
Very
are
well
preparing
said.
ourselves.
Very
Yeah.
well
And
said. Yeah.
and then at some point something emerges out of all the odds and ends that we've collected along the way, which is just really cool to see in your story.
Thank you.
I'm curious, just to kind of circle all the way back to my actual first question. When did you start to? It's just about your name. When did you come to be called Lion? To find that as your identity and have that as your name.
As I mentioned, my first teacher who asked me that question, "What's the nature of human nature?" He had a school in the mountains of Colorado called the Adventure Trails Survival School and Brain Laboratory. And yeah, he
Wow.
was he was an amazing guy. He was a genius. 3 degrees from University of Chicago. Had been in World War II as an army guy going across enemy lines and killing Germans and opening up places like Auschwitz. And so he had an amazing background, and he took me on as kind of an apprentice. And one of the parts of his school on the mountain was that you chose a medicine name, like the Indians did when they went
Mm-hmm.
through a transformation. And so that's how my name came to me. As I was thinking, well, what's my medicine name? I don't know anything about medicine. I don't know anything about Indians. I'm a Jewish kid from the suburbs of Denver. So what do I
Yeah.
know from those things? Uh,
Yeah.
so I was walking through the woods saying, what's my medicine name? And I heard lion, and I went, lion. I
Mm.
don't know anything about lions. Uh, it's like they're in the zoo. That's all
Yes.
I knew.
Yes.
And so I said, well, if that's my potential, then it's certainly dormant at the moment. So
Mm.
I called myself Sleeping Lion, and
Yeah.
over time it changed until I just grew into the name, and it became my name when I was about 24.
I love it. So so that's been with you for quite a while.
Yes, most of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to circle back to some of the language that you've been using around beliefs and unlocking these, unlocking, getting out of this stuckness. You talked about, kind of reprogramming our subconscious, and you keep using the word technology. And I just want to circle in on what you mean by technology, because most of the time when we hear that word, we think of like, hardware, right? Like computer motherboards and um, you know, that kind of technology. But that's not what you're talking about, is it? I should
No,
ask, but I assume that is not what you're talking about when you're
no,
talking about technology.
yeah, I'm talking about inner technology, and so we're reprogramming the motherboard inside the mind, and
Yes.
we're changing the human operating system,
Yeah.
because the human operating system are all of these beliefs and structures and patterns that we've accumulated since infancy, actually since while still in the womb, this
Mm.
pattern identification starts. And so we come to these conclusions and beliefs and understandings of the world and of who we are and who other people are and how we're supposed to relate to them and what we're capable of and what we shouldn't do. And so that accumulation becomes our human operating system. It's the operating system
Yes.
at the subconscious level that's running us when we're not consciously changing it or consciously choosing it. So
Yes.
most people are caught in these patterns and they just see it as reality because our beliefs are like lenses we look through and we see the world through them. The lenses are invisible, just like glasses or contact lenses, but the world looks a certain way. And
Yeah.
so when we go down to that level of consciousness, to the subconscious, and change the lens, it's like changing from green to yellow sunglasses. You see a different world. And so
Wow.
when you see a
Yeah.
different world, you see yourself differently. Other people are different. How you relate to them is different. And what possibilities are out there are different. You suddenly see new possibilities that weren't there before.
I love that, and it just so rings true with my experience and the work that I do. That, like, we're so often unaware of the things that are driving us and the choices that we're making and how we're, like you said, like the lenses that shape our reality. I'm curious, as you think about, you're talking about accumulating these ideas, these beliefs throughout your life. When do those beliefs change? Like, without the work, other than the work that you do and other folks do around bringing intentional change, are there moments in your experience and your expertise when life events shift those?
Yes, usually when reality hits you on the head like a two by four or like a bullet crossing your skull.
Yes. Yes. That is
Unfortunately,
my experience as well. But I wanted to throw that over the wall to you just to hear how you talk about it. Yeah.
yeah. So when something dramatic happens, it kind of wakes us up out of our sleep that we're walking around in. And it
Yeah.
can be losing a job, or it can be the company going bankrupt, or it can be an entrepreneurial venture failing, or it can be a child dying or getting sick, or
Yeah.
a partner dying. These are the life transitions that are most challenging, and they provide the biggest opportunity for shifts. If you
Yes.
use it well, then
Yes.
you learn the lessons, you gain new knowledge and understanding, you see the world differently. Most people just go back to their old patterns
Mm.
uh, because we're pattern based beings. We have this,
Yes.
everybody uses the same analogy of the iceberg. We have a little 1% sticking above the water. That's our conscious mind. And the rest is in the subconscious and the collective unconscious mind. So
Yeah.
that's where all the action's happening. Uh,
Yeah.
what we're doing in our conscious reality is we're reacting to what's happening
Mm.
instead of choosing to respond in a certain way. So it takes both clearing out the past programs and installing better programs that work so that we're now operating out of a different lens that's more open, that's more easy, that where we get to become our true self instead of some operating puppet.
I love that. That is really well said and great analogies. Just for I want to dig into like the method, the technology, if you will, of getting into that. But just to circle back to that idea of like the crisis or the dramatic events that can occur, and you said those can be a place where people can bring some intentionality to that space and find new beliefs, and use that as a springboard into change. But often people don't. For people who are listening who might be in one of those spaces where maybe they just lost their job, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe whatever, something's happening in their lives and they're listening to this right now, what do you have to say to them about using that crisis that's happening unto personal transformation?
My suggestion is always the same: examine your beliefs. Now, we have a free uh, program that we give away called Belief Self Diagnosis, in which it guides you through this process of looking at what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about others? What do you believe about how you should relate to others? What do you believe about your religion? What do you believe about life? What do you believe about your work, your finances, money? And so when you start digging into what you believe, you're asking yourself the question, investigating your subconscious mind and finding out what are those programs down there.
Yeah.
That's the first step. The second step is to look through that long list. Some will be positive, some will be negative, some will be limiting, some will be empowering, and find the ones that are most limiting and most interfering with your life, and then focus on changing them, because that's the leverage point. That's
Yeah.
the that's
Mm.
the machinery underneath the surface, that if you change that, then your world will be different. There's a lot of outside in technologies like, psychotherapy or EMDR or, you name it, NLP. There's lots of them out there. They're mostly outside in attempts to change. But when you work with your beliefs, that's an inside out job. When you
Mm.
change the inside, then the outside changes. Our beliefs create our experience. So if you change your beliefs, you will change your experience.
I love that. Such a good response. I love that idea of starting with the most limiting. That's super powerful. And I have not thought of that before. Like, as far as creating a hierarchy of which one of these to address. I'm curious, for someone listening. They're like, okay, I have this belief that I can't I can't be better than my parents, or I can't, have another level of success. Maybe is a belief that they have, right? Just an example to throw out there. Once they're aware of it, how do you go about changing it? It's one
Oh,
thing to be aware, it's another thing to actually do what you're talking about.
absolutely. Well, there's many ways of changing beliefs, and a lot of them are these outside in techniques. So, for example, look to see if it's true, find evidence that it's not true, focus on the evidence, tell yourself more about the evidence. This is kind of standard belief change technology, and it works some
Yep.
of the time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work all the time because our beliefs are deep inset programs. They're the patterns we rely on to survive. And so if you try an outside in technique, you may say, like affirmations, for example, I am free to do what I will. And
Yeah.
then what you do is you're stimulating all your old beliefs to jump up and say, no, you're not. You can't do whatever you want to. What's wrong with you? Who the
Yes.
hell do you think you are? Right. And so you're just
Yes.
stimulating the old beliefs to come up and reassert themselves. And this is why most people stop or fail. It's not because of outside circumstances, it's because of these inner responses to our choices. So we've got to go in and change those beliefs first. And then when you apply the new belief, then it can take. It's like building a garden. You don't just throw seeds on rocky, weedy ground.
Yep.
You first clear the rocks and the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you plant your seeds, then they can grow and flower and fruit and give you what you want. Well,
Yeah.
it's the same in the psyche. If you
Yeah.
try to throw new beliefs on top of old beliefs, you're not going to get much to grow. But if you
Yeah.
clear out the old ones first, then when you plant the new beliefs, then they take and they actually manifest in your life.
Yeah. Well, just to take that another, down another layer, how much is that something that someone can do in their, like, on themselves, in their own mind, in their own thoughts and heart, and how much of that is something that you just need a professional, someone like yourself, to work with and help them in that process?
I'm sure you and everyone listening has held up two mirrors against each other, right? And you see that kind of infinite regression. It gets smaller and smaller, further and further away.
Yeah.
That's the way the mind is. So when you try working on yourself, on your own mind with your mind, then you're sort of using the tools that you're trying to change the tools that you're trying to use.
Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
seen that before, but it makes sense
It
somehow.
does make sense. I like it. It's a great analogy. Yeah.
So it really does take a coach to help you see into yourself deep enough and challenge those beliefs so that they're not running you in the process. We teach our clients the techniques that they can then use themselves, because there are specific things they can do to change their own beliefs. But you got to crank the engine and get it started.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of training and a number of sessions and experiences. So then you go, aha, I've got it. Now I can clear my own beliefs.
Got it.
But even then, you can learn to cut your own hair. You'll
Hmm.
never do as good a job as a stylist, right? But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can fart around with it.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to do your own brain surgery. So
Yes.
even when you learn how to clear your own beliefs, you go find a specialist to help you with the really deep ones. And there's
Yeah.
probably 3 to 5 major complexes of beliefs that are running your life. And for the big ones, you go to an expert.
I feel like this is what we're talking about. But again, I just want to kind of peel back. I don't know. It feels like peeling back the onion, another layer here. I know you're talking about like going into the subconscious and like doing this work. Like maybe you can't, disclose all of the like how it's done, but like what does it look like are we talking about meditation? Are we talking about psychedelics? Are we like what's the scope of the technology that you're referring to and the process that you're alluding to?
Well, having taken over 100 workshops, trainings, and shamanic practices, I can endorse a lot of those things.
Yeah.
But I don't use those things in my practice,
Yes.
because I've worked with executives. So I've got to be able to take an executive through this kind of process and not have it be too woo or weird, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so it's a guided visualization process, and if I could give you a little sample, if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do it. I think that would be really helpful for listeners.
Okay, good. So Dan, what's a belief that you've wrestled with for a long time and haven't really cleared out? It keeps haunting you.
So one belief that I'm currently working with, because this will be like real relevant, is like just how like what is possible for my work with this podcast specifically, like as far as can it become the primary income source for my family? And my belief has been no, like that is I just can't do it. And I could tell some stories about why, about products that I've launched that have flopped and different efforts that like I get this slow incremental growth, but it's like I've got 3 kids and a mortgage to pay, and so I've got this limiting belief. As much as I want this to succeed, um, I have a hard time believing that is possible.
Okay, good. So one of the first steps we take is we simplify the belief, because the psyche is pretty simple, right? So say the belief as simply as you can.
I don't believe that the meaning movement can be my primary income.
Okay, good. Now, if you were a child and you had the same feeling or the same belief, how would the child say it? Take it out of the podcast realm and
Yeah,
put it in the life realm.
in the life realm. Um, I don't think I can do it.
Beautiful. Okay, good. So now we'll simplify it even further. So try this. Feel what it feels like to hold the belief, I can't do it. Say it out
I
loud and
can't.
feel
I
it.
can't do it. The negative. I can't. Right? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
I can't do it. Like it feels like I feel sad.
mhm.
Um, I can't. It feels like I feel like this kind of inward movement, like almost like I'm collapsing in on myself. Um, yeah, very much like a downward feeling, a heavy feeling.
Yes, beautiful. So our beliefs create feelings, and those feelings kind of become like an outfit we wear all the time, like clothing we're carrying around with us. And because we have thousands of beliefs, sometimes those layers of clothing can get really heavy,
Yeah,
and it can depress you and it can collapse you and right that.
yeah.
So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes for a minute
Okay.
and feel what it feels like to hold the belief, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And feel that awful feeling. And part
Yep.
of the key here is to feel the bad feelings we don't want to feel,
Yes, that makes
because if we
sense.
suppress them, we don't get to experience them fully. So
We
just go
run
ahead.
from them, and then they. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So just go ahead and feel it
Yep.
fully. And now what
Mm-hmm.
I'd like you to do is I'd like you to remember earlier times in your life when you felt that way. Follow the feeling back in time,
Mm-hmm.
earlier and earlier, like a stone skipping across water. Go to
Yep.
incident to incident to incident and go back as far as you can to the first time you felt that way
Yep.
and describe the earliest memory that's coming up.
Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail
That's
about it,
fine. That's fine.
but just for privacy's sake. But
Yeah.
someone important in my life called me stupid.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being vulnerable because this is where we have to get to. This is where the core is. Okay. So I'd like you to close your eyes again, and I'm going to take you through a different memory. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd like you to imagine that little boy who's someone called stupid and feel that. And I'd like you to feel your adult self, your wise, loving adult self, the one that loves your children and has great intelligence and wants to help a lot of people. And imagine walking into that scene that's that's there where that boy feels that way. What's your instinct to do for that boy?
To like hug him, um, to like speak words of like strength and belief to him.
Beautiful, beautiful, good.
Yeah.
So do that. I'd like you to do
Mm-hmm.
that in your
Mm-hmm.
imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Just pick him up, take him out of that scene, take him to a really beautiful place in nature, and
Mm-hmm.
sit down with him and tell him the things that you would tell him, knowing how he's feeling. You would say things like, "I'm here. I've got you. I'm not going away. I'm your friend. I'm your buddy, and I'm going to tell you the truth about you." And
Yeah.
so, in your imagination, or if you want to out loud, tell him the
Mm-hmm.
truth about how beautiful he is, how intelligent he is, how successful he's going to be in life, and
Yeah.
fill him with the confidence that he needed at that moment.
Mm. I love this. Yeah.
And notice how he's responding. How is he responding to you?
He's smiling
Hmm.
and like sitting up straighter,
Yeah, yeah,
feeling slumped down.
yeah. And tell him that he's a learning being and that all of us are learning beings and that he's going to learn and grow and that he might not know certain things now, but he's going to learn them later. And that anything he wants to learn, he can. Any skill he wants to gain, he can, because all skills come with study and practice. And he can study and practice anything he wants and become confident, become eventually a master. That it takes time, step by step, but every skill is grown that way. Whether you want to learn to play the piano or build a rock wall or a skill, you have to study it and practice it and study it more and practice it more and study and practice. And that he has that capability built into his mind and built
Yeah.
into his body and built into his soul so that he will be able to succeed at anything he sets his mind to.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. I feel a lot hearing those words and
Good,
imagining myself, saying that to that boy.
good. And tell
Yeah.
him that you're going to carry him inside your heart forever and that you'll always be there for him. You'll always be a voice in his ear, reminding him how great he is and how much capability he has.
Mm, that's great.
Now ask him if he has anything to say. If he does, you can share it or not as you wish.
You have a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
Um, it's great. He smiled and he said, "Let's go."
All right, good. So tell him that you've got some adult things to do and that you're going to send him off to play, but you'll be back in touch and you'll be there whenever he needs you. And then come back to yourself where you're standing and talking to me, staring into a microphone. How do you feel?
Love it. I feel great. Yeah. It feels. I feel happy, tender. Um, I feel like a little self-aware of I know I'm very comfortable with my tears. I cry a lot. I know but also I'm always like, oh wait, I know this is your work, right? So this is not new space for you. But I'm like, oh wait, how does my podcast guest feel about a weepy host? So that's a piece of it too.
That's normal. That's normal. So
Yeah,
here's we're going to just do a little test to see whether this took or not, and then I'll talk
yeah,
about why it did or didn't.
yeah,
So now I'd like you to say out loud, "I can't do it," and just see what it feels like to say that.
yeah. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Does it have any reality?
Not really. Like it feels like it's like like I was really feeling on my shoulders before, and it feels like it kind of touches me and falls off.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool. Cool. So
yeah,
that was successful then. So we've
yeah,
reprogrammed a very early memory. It's
mm,
in psychology, it's called memory reconsolidation.
yeah,
And that's one of the techniques we use. We have 15 different techniques, but that's one that we use. It's very powerful for going
yeah.
back and reprogramming early programs.
Mm,
Because and we did it experientially. Experience is multidimensional, and so when we use a multidimensional technique like this, it impacts the multidimensional nature of that belief, how it was showing up in all parts of you. If it's success, and this will continue to anchor, by the way, for the next 48 hours or so, so it'll become more and more real in your experience.
yeah.
So that's one of many techniques we use
Mm,
to help our clients
I love
change
it.
their beliefs.
I love it. Thank you for that. I mean, both personally, like that was a really powerful experience, and then also, on behalf of listeners to to hear and see it in action, I think really helps understand like what it is we're talking about when we're talking about these kind of ethereal, I don't know if that's the right word, just hard to grasp, right? Ideas, and it brings it into reality. So that's
It's my pleasure and honor to do that with you, Dan, and also to offer it to the world because it's so powerful. It's fast. It's complete. The old
mm,
beliefs don't come back like all the other techniques. You try affirmations and it doesn't have much impact, or you go to the psychotherapist and you're back with the same problem the next week, or you
yeah,
do some NLP, but then you need to keep doing it. So this is like once and done. But we have
mm,
tens of thousands of beliefs that
yes,
many of which are interfering. So it is a process. It's not a magic bullet that fixes everything at once, but it is a process that works, that you can count on, and that you can actually see and feel in yourself because your world begins to change. You see new
yes.
things, you relate to people differently. All of the results that we want actually happen because we've changed it from the inside out.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And I mean, I think the real power is like that are like you're literally making a new person. You're literally, because our identity is a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and it's exactly what we're talking about here. And by changing that story, we're creating a new person, inviting a new person to emerge, I guess, in the world. Is that how you think of it?
I do. I do. In fact, what we see is people become more and more themselves.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not creating a new person. It's
Mm,
allowing the real, true self to come out in the world as your full gift that you are. So you're
mm,
already a great gift to the world. I'm not talking
yeah.
just to you, Dan, but to everybody who's listening. And if that true self came out as a gift to the world would be a better place.
Yes. Totally, totally. I'll sign off on that 100%. That is absolutely, absolutely true. And so well said. So much better, a better framing to that, letting that true identity emerge rather than my language of making a new making a new person, which is really really beautiful. How do you, just to kind of zoom out just a little bit? I know we're going up on we've been on our time here, but how do you think about, and maybe it's a better way to say this, is what words do you use to in your own, maybe to yourself or to your loved ones, about your work, when you think about whether it's mission, whether it's legacy, whether it's vocation? I don't even know like really what the question is here, but I just kind of want to zoom out to like the macro level about the work that you're doing in the world and how you think about the impact that you want to have.
Well, our world is in trouble. There's a lot of trouble. There's not just climate change and the heat wave we're going through right now. There's political division. There's war. There's starvation. There's it's a messy, messy world. And my vision and mission has always been to make the world a better place. And so
Mhm.
I've looked my whole life for where is the greatest leverage for moving this gigantic, moving train that's heading off of a cliff. And so, this is my work. This is what I do is I help people change deeply, profoundly, and quickly, and then give them the tools to help others change quickly, profoundly, and permanently so that the world can shift one person at a time, one belief at a time. And then after we deal with our personal beliefs, we then have to deal with our collective and social and cultural beliefs because
Yeah.
they're part of the problem too. And so when I'm teaching my course, the Clear Beliefs Coach Training, I teach about how to clear karmic beliefs and cultural beliefs and religious beliefs. And, we're up against a big battle
Yeah.
because it's many of those beliefs that are driving us over the cliff. So
Mm.
we have to take social action too. It's not just internal change. We have to collectively take action to change the world because there's some parts of the world that will only change that way.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Thank you for that. And what a beautiful, beautiful vision for your work. And I appreciate how you put it in the context of these major world events that are happening around us. So thank you for that. And it's probably a good place for us just to move towards wrapping up. Lion, well, it's been so awesome having you on the show. Thank you for all of this. But for folks that want to follow along with your work and connect with you, is there anything you'd like to invite people to?
Sure. We offer monthly free events on finding your beliefs on different topics. We've done one on money and finance and wealth, and another one on relationships. And so then you can find out about the next one and register at clearbeliefs.com/belief-relief-events. So it's clearbeliefs.com/belief-relief-events. And that will tell you when the next free event is. And it'll also tell you when our next 3-week program is where we actually delete the beliefs. So the free events are discover, and then the 3-week program is delete.
I love it. That's so fantastic. I'll make sure to link up to that in the show notes as well. This has just been so fun. And again, I think just personally meaningful to go through that exercise with you. And, I hope listeners, I know I got a lot of value out of this. I know that listeners will as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Lion.
You're very welcome. Let me add one more thing, and that is that for people who want to clear their beliefs, we have a coaching program. That's clearyourbeliefs.com. And for those who want to learn these techniques, you'll find information at clearbeliefs.com.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you so much, Lion.
Thanks, Dan. I so appreciate being on your program and getting to share this with you.
Thank you so much, Lion, and thank you, listeners, viewers, for tuning in. You can find links to Lion's work at themeaningmovement.com/lion, LIO. And while you're there, jump on the email list. There's boxes all over the site that will get you on the list, and we send out an email every week that's full of resources, ideas, thought-provoking prompts to get you moving more towards the things that you want from life and overcoming the obstacles that stand in your way to help you feel more in control of the outcomes that you're seeking. So go to themeaningmovement.com and jump on the email list there. It's totally free. You can unsubscribe at any time. It won't hurt my feelings. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Thank you if you have left a rating, a review. Those mean so much to me. If you haven't done so, please take a moment to do so. We'll be back with you in a couple days. Our artwork is by Eliezer Ruiz. Our music is by Tom Morum. Thanks so much.